So 5 months later, following in the footsteps of the Carolina Five, I'm arriving in Madagascar to see how they're getting on. Madagascar. The very name is full of exotic promise. What's more, it's one of the few places on Earth that Michael Palin hasn't visited, which gives it a certain cachet among truly intrepid explorers. And here I am, British comedian, bred in the captivity of Western-super-Mare, about to be released into the wild thousands of miles from the nearest cappuccino. I wasn't sure what to expect. Ah! My first impression is that it's like stepping back in time to a prehistoric world, although the dinosaurs are a little friendlier. It's as if I've stumbled across the leftovers from Jurassic Park, a strange collection of out-of-date models and crazy new inventions that never quite took off. With over 400 recorded species of spider alone, and tens of thousands of insects not yet classified by science, there's the constant danger of treading on something that hasn't even been discovered. Almost all of the creatures here in Madagascar exist nowhere else on Earth, which is a bit of a relief. However, if it wasn't for this place, we wouldn't have lemurs at all. And for me, at least, life would lose its meaning. So I'm off to find some, and my first destination is Barenti, a small lemur reserve in the south of the island. 5:30 in the morning, and it's already 80 degrees and rising. I'm up early to go and find my first wild lemur. I've adored them since I fell in love with a ring-tailed lemur at Bristol Zoo in 1954. And since then there's been a string of relationships, but always, sadly, in zoos. So this is my first field trip, a chance to meet them in the wild, to understand better how lemurs first got to Madagascar, why they survived here when they died out in Africa, and what threatens their future now. The question is, where to start looking for them? I needn't have worried. The forest here is full of ringtails, and if they seem particularly relaxed, I should explain that this was Sunday. The trademark ringed tail makes this easily the best known of all the lemur species. But what I like about them is that they've got bags of attitude. They remind me of football fans on their way to a match, all waving their scarves at one another. These guys are Newcastle United. He's Derby County. And all the ones up there are either Fulham or Notts County. Fulham. Aren't you nice? Aren't you nice? I want your scarf. You bounce. I wish I could bounce. I used to be able to bounce. Ah, well. The tails aren't just for show. They're a vital part of the ringtail's survival kit. When two rival troops cross paths, the tail is their primary weapon in the war over territory. You see, the males rub scent from their wrists into their tail, which is then wafted at the opposition in what zoologists refer to as a stink fight. The mothers lead the attack, carrying their babies into battle, because physical clashes rarely take place. The battle is won or lost on who can produce the most offensive odour. The ones who showered this morning are in retreat. Sunbathing is one of the ringtails' more peaceful pastimes, and it's here that they start to seem strangely familiar to us. They bathe sitting in an almost Buddha-like posture, worshipping the sun to warm themselves up at the start of the day. Like us too, they are very sociable, and they spend much of their time grooming each other. As in human society, each group has a distinct pecking order, and females are very much at the top of the tree. So what with the sunbathing, the socialising, the preening, the bossy women, and the fondness for football matches, it's easy to see why these lemurs get along so well with us human beings. It's as if we've known each other for years. So it may not surprise you to learn that these lemurs and we human beings have a common ancestor. And the best clue to that is if you look at their hand. It's very, very like ours, except that the thumb is not opposable. They can't do that. It's more like a finger down the side. So if these lemurs and we human beings have all these things in common, it's interesting to note that there is one glaring difference. And that is that these are, compared with us, a little bit dim. Which raises the question, why is it that on the island of Madagascar, our common ancestor developed into these little fellas, whereas on the mainland of Africa, it developed into a species that has put one of its own on the moon? The answer, in a word, is competition. 60 million years ago, we were all tiny, primitive, lemur-like creatures living together on the mainland of Africa. But as time went on, competition from other mammals in Africa forced us to develop bigger and bigger brains. However, a lucky few of those original primitive lemurs managed to escape the evolutionary rat race and found asylum on this paradise island across the sea. But how did they get there? Nobody's quite sure how, but the current theory is that they made the crossing on a raft, well, on a piece of floating vegetation. And there's two reasons why they could have done this. First, they were capable of slowing down their metabolism so that they could go for days without food. And second, they were light enough not to sink the raft. Now, this theory would explain why no larger, heavier mammals ever made it across to Madagascar. With the result that when the lemur ancestor finally arrived, it found that there were no predators and no competitors for food either, as there were no apes and no monkeys. So it was able to sit back, relax, and evolve, not perhaps upwards so much as sideways, producing many different species of lemurs. Big ones, small ones, nocturnal ones, diurnal ones, tree hoppers, ground dwellers, solitary ones, social ones. Some with a marked interest in phenomenology, others devoted collectors of Gary Glitter records. A small group became fascinated by shrimps and spent their entire lives training them to do somersaults. Oh, do shut up.
Mikey, 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 Mikey!